I expected candles and store-bought cake for my 30th birthday. Instead, my sister tapped her spoon against a glass, smiled like a philanthropist, and handed me an itemized bill for $28,000 in front of our entire family. As they applauded her cruelty, I did not cry. I simply reached under the table for the thick black binder I had brought along. If she wanted to audit our history, I was ready to collect the full balance. My name is Millie Hughes, and the first thing I noticed when I walked into the private back room of the Tuscan Olive was that my mother had seated me next to the kitchen door. It was fitting, really. Even at my own 30th birthday party, I was an afterthought in the architecture of my own family. The room smelled of garlic knots and industrial-strength floor cleaner, a sensory combination that usually signaled a headache was on the horizon. I was coming off a 10-hour shift at the logistics center. My feet were throbbing inside shoes that were more sensible than stylish, and all I wanted was to go home, put on sweatpants, and watch bad reality television. But I could not go home. I had to perform. "Happy birthday, sweetie," my mother, Patricia, shrieked from across the room. She did not stand up to hug me. She waved a Chardonnay glass in my general direction, her other hand firmly gripping the arm of my father. Gordon. They looked like they were holding court rather than attending a celebration. "Thanks, Mom," I said, forcing the smile that I had perfected over 3 decades of being the Hughes family doormat. My husband, Noah, squeezed my hand. He was the only person in the room who knew how heavy the black tote bag on my shoulder actually was. He looked at me, his eyes asking the silent question, "Are we really doing this tonight?" I gave a microscopic nod. We were. The room was packed with aunts, uncles, and cousins who I only saw at funerals, or when someone needed a co-signer. They were loud, already 3 drinks deep, and laughing with that specific sharp timbre that usually meant they were gossiping about someone in the room. Tonight, I knew that someone was me. The air conditioning was rattling overhead, fighting a losing battle against the humidity of a sticky Ohio September evening. Then, the atmosphere shifted. It was a physical drop in pressure, the kind that happens right before a tornado touches down. Delaney had arrived. My sister did not just walk into a room, she curated an entrance. She was 32, 2 years older than me, but she worked very hard to look 25. She wore a dress that probably cost more than my first car, a shimmering, backless thing that was entirely inappropriate for a chain Italian restaurant in Riverton Ridge, and she was clinging to Brent's arm like he was a trophy she had just won at the county fair. Brent was the perfect accessory. He had the teeth, the tan, and the suit that screamed mid-level corporate management. He looked like every profile picture on LinkedIn had merged into a single human being. "Sorry we are late," Delaney announced, her voice pitching up an octave to feign innocence. "Traffic coming out of the city was a nightmare, and we just had to stop to pick up Millie's gift." She was holding a thin, cream-colored folder. It looked harmless. It looked like a menu. But I watched her eyes scan the room, bypassing me completely to make eye contact with our mother. There was a nod, a signal. "It is fine, darling. You are here now," my mother cooed. "Sit. We are just about to bring out the cake." We sat. I took my seat near the swinging kitchen door, listening to the waiter drop a tray of silverware somewhere behind me. Noah kept his leg pressed against mine under the table, a grounding wire. My son, Leo, who was only 7, sat on my other side, swinging his legs and eyeing the empty bread basket. "Mom, can I have cake now?" Leo whispered. "Soon, buddy," I said, smoothing his hair. "Just a few minutes." The waitstaff, looking harassed and underpaid, wheeled out a 3-tier cake that was aggressively pink. It was not a flavor I liked. It was strawberry, which was Delaney's favorite. I watched the candles flicker, 3 big ones representing 3 decades. The room sang, a discordant chorus of people who barely knew me, and I blew them out. I made a wish. I wished that I would not shake when the time came. As the smoke cleared, Delaney stood up. She picked up a spoon and tapped it against her wine glass. Clink, clink, clink. The sound cut through the chatter like a knife. "Everyone, if I could have a moment," Delaney beamed. She had that influencer glow, the kind that looks great on Instagram but feels predatory in person. I know we are all here to celebrate Millie, 30 years old. Wow, it is a big milestone. She paused for effect. The room went silent. Phones were raised. I saw the red recording dots blinking on at least a dozen screens. They sensed drama. They were hungry for it. You know, Delaney continued, her voice taking on a sad, charitable tone. Millie and I have always been different. I have always been the one to charge ahead, to take risks. And Millie, well, Millie has always needed a little more help, a little more support. I saw my father nod solemnly, as if this was a tragic truth he had carried for years. And as a family, we have always given it, Delaney said, placing a hand on her chest. We have given and given, because that is what families do. But Brent and I were talking, and Mom and Dad agreed. 30 is the age of adulthood, real adulthood. And the best gift we can give you, Millie, is the gift of reality. She picked up the cream-colored folder from the table. We decided that instead of a purse or a spa day, we would give you a clean slate. But to get a clean slate, you have to know where you stand. She walked around the table, her heels clicking on the tile, until she was standing right behind my chair. She smelled of expensive vanilla and condescension. She reached over and handed the folder to Leo. Leo, sweetie, she said, her voice dripping with fake sugar. Can you read the big number on that paper for your mommy? Just the one at the bottom? It was a masterstroke of manipulation. If I snatched it away, I was the hysterical mother terrifying her child. If I let him read it, the blow would come from the innocent voice of my own son. Leo looked at me, confused. I kept my face entirely neutral. It is okay, Leo, I said softly. Read it. Leo opened the folder. He squinted at the single sheet of paper inside. 28,000. Leo read slowly, stumbling over the zeros. $28,000. The room erupted. It was not a gasp of horror. It was applause. My Aunt Linda, who had borrowed $500 from me 3 years ago and never paid it back, actually hooted. My cousin Mike clapped his hands over his head. It was a performance, and they were the audience for a public shaming that they felt was long overdue. Delaney smiled, looking benevolent. That is the total, Millie? For everything. The times we helped you out, the gifts we gave that you assumed were free, the support, we wrote it all down. Consider this your invoice for the last decade. We do not expect you to pay it all today, obviously, but it is time you started paying us back. It is time you grew up. She dropped a fake invoice onto my plate, right next to a slice of strawberry cake. The applause died down into a murmur of agreement. I heard phrases floating in the air. Finally, she needed to hear it. Good for Delaney. Lesson learned. My mother looked at me with a smug satisfaction, waiting for the tears. She was waiting for me to shrink, to apologize, to beg for forgiveness for being a burden. That was the script. I had followed it my whole life, but I was not following it tonight. I picked up the invoice. I did not look at it. I simply folded it in half, then in half again, until it was a small, sharp square. I placed it gently on the table. Then, I bent down. From the floor beneath my chair, I pulled out the black binder. It was 3 inches thick. The metal rings snapped together with a heavy industrial sound. I placed it on the table. The thud was heavy enough to make the silverware rattle. The murmurs in the room stopped. That is an interesting game, Delaney, I said. My voice was not loud. I did not shout. I spoke with the flat, emotionless cadence of a person reading an inventory list. If today is the day we are playing the bill game, then I accept the terms. What is that? Delaney asked. Her smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. This, I rested my hand on the leather cover. This is the ledger, because you are right. We should settle accounts. Leo, go to Daddy. Noah pulled Leo into his lap, shielding him. I flipped the binder open. The first page was not a single sheet of paper. It was a laminated summary spreadsheet, color-coded and indexed. I turned the binder around so it faced Delaney and Brent. You calculated $28,000 based on, I assume, inflated estimates of birthday gifts and dinners you bought me, I said. However, I prefer hard data. This is a record of every transaction between my bank accounts and yours, Mom's, Dad's, and Brent's, dating back to the day I graduated college. I looked at Brent. He was still smiling, but it looked frozen now, like a mask that was starting to crack. Shall we start with the wedding? I asked. Charleston, 2018. You wanted the upgraded floral arch. Mom called me crying, saying it would ruin the family image if we did not have it. I transferred $4,500 to the florist directly. I have the receipt here. Tab 3. I flipped the pages. The plastic page protectors crinkled in the silence. The down payment on your house, I continued, my finger tracing the line. You told me it was a short-term bridge loan because Brent's bonus was delayed. That was 4 years ago. The transfer was for $15,000. Interest, at the current market rate over 48 months, brings that single line item to roughly $19,000. Millie, stop it, my mother hissed from across the table. You are making a scene. I am not making a scene, I corrected her. I am making an audit. I looked at Delaney. She was pale beneath her bronzer. There is the car insurance you forgot to pay for 6 months in 2020. I listed, turning another page. The bail money for cousin Mike. Yes, Mike, I have that check copy right here, which was supposedly a gift from Dad, but actually came from my savings account. The credit card debt I absorbed so you could qualify for your mortgage refinancing. I looked down at the summary number at the bottom of the page. It was bolded, in size 20 font. When you add up the principal, the compounded interest, and the penalties for the loans I took out in my name to cover your lifestyle, I said, looking straight into Delaney's eyes. The total is not $28,000. I took a breath. The room was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. The total comes to $412,653.14, I said. Brent's smile was gone. He looked like he was going to be sick. That is ridiculous, Delaney sputtered, her laugh sounding high and brittle. You made that up. You cannot just print out numbers and call it real. This is my birthday party for you. You are being ungrateful. It is not a party, I said. It is a transaction, and you are in the red. A chair scraped against the floor at the table next to us. The man who had been sitting there alone, nursing an iced tea and eating a Cobb salad for the last 45 minutes, stood up. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that was significantly more expensive than Brent's, but he wore it with the ease of someone who did not need to prove anything. He had a briefcase on the chair next to him. He walked over to our table. The family stared at him. They thought he was a manager coming to tell us to quiet down. Good evening, the man said. His voice was calm, baritone, and terrifyingly professional. My name is Wade Harrington. I am a partner at Harrington, Stiles, and Associates. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, placing it gently on the table in front of Brent. I represent Mrs. Millie Hughes, Wade said. He did not look at the guests. He looked only at Delaney and Brent. What you have just witnessed is the preliminary presentation of discovery. The binder Millie is holding contains certified bank records, notarized affidavits of transfers, and recovered emails wherein you, Delaney, and you, Brent, acknowledge these funds as loans to be repaid. Wade paused, letting the legal weight of his words settle over the strawberry cake. This is not a matter of emotion, Wade said, his eyes scanning the room, daring anyone to clap now. This is paperwork, and under Ohio state law, verbal contracts confirmed by digital correspondence are binding. You have been served with a formal demand for repayment. He checked his watch, a platinum piece that glinted under the harsh restaurant lights. It is now 7:15 in the evening on Saturday, Wade said. You have exactly 72 hours to respond to my office before we file the civil suit. I suggest you enjoy the cake. It appears to be the last thing you will be getting for free. I closed the binder. The snap of the ring sounded like a gunshot. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered. I did not wait for a response. I did not look at my mother, who was gaping like a fish out of water. I nodded to Noah. He picked up Leo, who was clutching a breadstick, and we stood up. As I walked out of the restaurant, passing the table where the bill for $28,000 still lay forgotten next to a fork, I felt lighter than I had in 10 years. I could feel the eyes of my family burning into my back, but for the first time, the heat did not hurt. It felt like fuel. The drive home from the Tuscan Olive was quiet. It was not the tense, angry silence that usually follows a family argument, but rather the exhausted, hollow silence of a demolition crew driving away from a leveled building. Noah drove with both hands on the wheel, his eyes fixed on the dark road ahead. In the back seat, Leo had fallen asleep almost instantly, his head lolling against the booster seat, clutching the breadstick like a talisman. We lived in a small, 3-bedroom ranch on the very edge of Riverton Ridge. It was the kind of house real estate agents called a starter home, with vinyl siding that needed power washing and a driveway that cracked every winter. But it was ours. We paid the mortgage on the first of every month. We fixed the leaky faucets ourselves. There were no marble countertops or heated floors, but there was also no debt that we could not name. As we pulled into the driveway, I looked at the dark windows of our house and felt a sudden, crushing weight in my chest. It was not regret. It was simply the sheer exhaustion of having carried the weight of 4 other adults for a decade. People often ask how someone like me organized. Logical, good with numbers could let themselves be bled dry for so long. They assume I must be weak, or stupid, or desperate for love. But financial abuse in a family does not start with a robbery. It starts with a favor. It starts with a compliment. I work as an operations manager for Crestwood Claims and Logistics. My entire professional life is built on tracking things. I manage supply chains, I mitigate risk, and I ensure that if a truck breaks down in Nebraska, the client in Chicago still gets their shipment. I am good at my job because I can see the catastrophic end of a small mistake before anyone else does. I live in spreadsheets. I dream in logistics. So, how did I miss the disaster in my own living room? I missed it because I was trained to miss it. It started 10 years ago, right after I graduated college. Delaney was 2 years older, but she was always the one in crisis. She was the artist, the visionary, the one who was too bright and beautiful to be bogged down by the mundane details of survival. I was the plotter, the worker bee. I remember the first significant transfer. Delaney had just moved into a loft downtown that she could not afford, claiming she needed the natural light for her mental health. She called me at 2 a.m, sobbing. She was $300 short on the security deposit. If she did not pay it by morning, she would lose the apartment. "You are so good with money, Millie," my mother had said the next day, after I had wired the funds. "Thank God we have one sensible child. You are the rock of this family." That was the hook. The sensible child. The rock. My parents, Patricia and Gordon, did not use whips to control me. They used identity. They crafted a persona for me that I felt obligated to maintain. I was the responsible one. I was the one who fixed things. If I said no, if I refused to help, I was not just being stingy. I was betraying my fundamental nature. I was failing to be the person they told me I was. Over the years, the requests stopped being emergencies and started being expectations. It was never a demand. It was always a crisis that only I could solve. Delaney needed new tires because her safety was at risk. Delaney needed a specialized course to get her real estate license so she could finally be independent. Delaney needed a specific dress for a networking gala because appearances were an investment. I kept waiting for the investment to pay off. Meanwhile, Delaney built a brand. On social media, she was the epitome of the self-made modern woman. She posted photos of her brunch, her outfits, her hustle. She wrote long, inspirational captions about grinding hard and manifesting abundance. I would sit in my cubicle at Crestwood, eating a turkey sandwich I had packed from home to save $12, and scroll through Instagram. I would see Delaney holding a designer bag that I knew I had paid for, via a temporary loan for her utility bills. The caption read, "Treat yourself, you earned it." She got the likes, I got the overdraft fees, but the money was only the currency. The real transaction was emotional. I remember a Sunday dinner 3 years ago. Noah and I had just found out we needed to replace the furnace. It was going to cost $4,000. We were stressed, tight on cash, and eating spaghetti at my parents' house. "Delaney is looking at a new lease on a BMW, my father announced, beaming as he passed the garlic bread. "She says it is important for her client image. We are so proud of her ambition." "That is great," Noah had said, his voice tight. "Millie and I are picking up extra shifts to cover our heater." My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, you two always figure it out. You are safe. Delaney is taking risks. She needs our support." That was the dynamic. My stability was punished, because I was not drowning. They assumed I could carry everyone else who refused to learn how to swim. They looked at my modest life, my 10-year-old sedan, my packed lunches, my lack of vacations, and assumed I did not need anything. They looked at Delaney's chaos and assumed she needed everything. Noah saw it before I did. He never forbade me from helping. He knew that would only drive a wedge between us. Instead, he asked questions. "Did she pay you back for the plane ticket?" he would ask, casually, while washing dishes. "She is going to," I would lie. "She is waiting on a commission check." "Okay," Noah would say. "I just want to make sure you are not being taken advantage of." I hated him in those moments. I hated him because he was right, and I was too cowardly to admit that my sister viewed me as a resource, not a sibling. I told myself I was keeping the peace. I told myself that family meant sacrifice, but the peace was a lie. The breaking point was not the money itself, it was the indifference. Last year, for Leo's 6th birthday, we hosted a small party in our backyard. We grilled hot dogs. I bought a sheet cake from the grocery store. It was simple, but Leo was happy. Delaney showed up an hour late. She did not bring a gift. She did not even bring a card. She swept in, made a plate of food, and spent 20 minutes complaining about how the humidity was ruining her hair. "I am so broke right now," she announced to the table, right as Leo was opening his presents. "I can barely afford gas." My mother immediately pivoted away from her grandson. "Oh, honey, is it that bad? Do you need some groceries?" I watched my son. He was holding up a Lego set Noah and I had saved for 2 months to buy him. He looked at his aunt, waiting for her to notice him. She never did. She was too busy negotiating a microloan from our mother over a paper plate of potato salad. Later that night, I checked my email. I saw a notification from a ticket broker 2 days prior. I had lent Delaney $500 for emergency dental work. The email confirmed a purchase of 2 front-row tickets to a concert in Columbus. Using the credit card she had saved on her browser, my credit card, she had stolen from me to go to a concert, and then came to my son's birthday empty-handed and complained about poverty. That was the night I stopped sleeping. That was the night the operations manager in me took over. I realized that I was not helping a struggling family member. I was subsidizing a parasite. And worse, I was teaching my parents that this was acceptable. By staying silent, by covering the gaps, by fixing the messes, I was preventing Delaney from ever facing the consequences of her actions. I was not being kind. I was being an accomplice to her delusion. I started digging, at Crestwood. When we audit a failing supply chain, we do not look at the promises. We look at the data. I applied the same cold, hard logic to my family tree. I pulled bank statements from 7 years ago. I found the transfers I had forgotten about, the temporary assistance for a vet bill for a dog she eventually gave away, the co-signing of a loan she swore she had refinanced but actually had not. The sheer volume of it made me nauseous. It was not just a few $1,000s here and there. It was a systematic siphoning of my future. Every dollar I gave her was a dollar I did not put into Leo's college fund. Every bailout I provided was a vacation Noah and I never took. I saw the patterns. The requests always came right before a major event where she needed to show off. The guilt trips from my mother always coincided with Delaney making a bad decision she wanted to hide. "You know how sensitive she is," my mother would say. "Don't make her feel bad about money. You know you have more than enough." I did not have more than enough. I just knew how to manage what I had. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. They resented me for the very stability they exploited. They mocked my boring job, my small house, my cheap clothes, all while eating the food bought with my paycheck. I had been afraid for so long. I was afraid that if I closed the vault, they would stop loving me. I was afraid that my value to them was entirely calculated in routing numbers and wire transfers. But as I sat in the car next to Noah, watching the garage door rumble open, I realized something that made the fear evaporate. They did not love me. You do not extort the people you love. You do not humiliate the people you love at their 30th birthday party with a fake invoice. They loved the convenience of me. They loved the safety net I provided. I looked over at Noah. He had parked the car and was unbuckling his seatbelt. He looked tired, but he looked at me with a pride that I had not seen in a long time. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I said, "but I am done. I was done being the good daughter. I was done being the sensible sister. I was done being the bank." I walked into my house, the house that Delaney called cramped and my mother called quaint. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water from the tap. I looked at the calendar on the fridge, where I had marked my birthday with a small star. Delaney had tried to weaponize my history against me. She thought she could shame me into silence by presenting a bill for $28,000. She thought I would be too embarrassed to fight back in public. She forgot who she was dealing with. She forgot that I was the one who kept the receipts. She forgot that while she was busy curating her life for an audience, I was busy documenting the reality. I took the black binder out of my bag and placed it on the kitchen counter. It looked out of place next to the toaster and the fruit bowl. It looked like a weapon, and in a way, it was. It was the only weapon I had left. The phone in my pocket buzzed. I knew who it was without looking. It would be my mother, likely texting me to say how disappointed she was that I had ruined the evening. It would be a demand for an apology. It would be a guilt trip designed to bring me back into the fold, back into my role as the silent, paying observer of their lives. I did not check the phone. I turned it off and placed it in the drawer. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. But tonight, in the quiet of my paid-for house, with my husband and children safe and sleeping, I finally felt something I had not felt in years. I felt free. The house was silent, but inside my head, the noise was deafening. It was the sound of 1,000 small concessions crashing together to form a catastrophe. I sat at our dining room table, the surface buried under stacks of paper that smelled of laser toner and old regret. Noah had gone to bed 3 hours ago, but sleep was a luxury I could not afford. I was an archaeologist digging through the ruins of my own financial history, and every layer I peeled back revealed a new level of rot. People assume that financial ruin happens all at once, like a house fire. You wake up and the roof is gone. But in my family, it was not a fire. It was termites. It was a slow, quiet eating away of the foundation until the structure could no longer hold its own weight. I opened the first banking export file on my laptop. It dated back 8 years. The first transfers were innocuous enough to be laughable. There was a $40 transfer for groceries when Delaney's debit card allegedly malfunctioned at Whole Foods. There was a $60 charge for a streaming service she swore she would cancel after the free trial, but somehow forgot for 18 months. I highlighted these rows in yellow. These were the testing grounds. She was checking the fence for electric current. When she realized there was no shock, she stepped through. Then came the recurring transfers. I found a standing order set up 5 years ago, $200, sent on the 15th of every month. The memo line simply read, "Help." I tried to remember the conversation that spawned this. I recalled Delaney sitting on my parents' porch, weeping about the cost of living in the city, about how unfair it was that her entry-level marketing job did not cover her Pilates membership and her organic meal kit delivery. My mother had looked at me with those wide, pleading eyes. "Millie, you are doing so well at the logistics firm. You would not miss $200, would you?" It is just until she gets on her feet. I did the math. $200 a month for 60 months. That was $12,000. $12,000 that I had poured into a hole that never filled up. I moved to the credit report I had pulled earlier that evening. This was where the nausea truly set in. Item number 4, a verified auto loan with a remaining balance of $14,000. Status, late. I closed my eyes and was transported back to the dealership showroom 4 years ago. The air had smelled of stale popcorn and floor wax. Delaney had fallen in love with a white luxury SUV that cost more than my annual salary at the time. She did not have the credit score to lease a bicycle, let alone a German car. It is just a formality, the finance manager had said, looking at his watch. She has the income. She just lacks the history. We just need a cosigner to validate the file. You are not really paying for the car. You are just vouching for her character. Please, Millie, Delaney had whispered, squeezing my hand. I need this car for client meetings. If I pull up in my old Honda, they will not take me seriously. This is an investment in my career. I swear on my life, you will never have to worry about a single payment. My father had chimed in from the waiting area. Do not hold your sister back. Millie, she is trying to fly. So I signed. I signed because I wanted to be the good sister who helped her fly. I looked at the payment history on the screen. Delaney had missed 7 payments in the last 2 years. Each time, the bank had auto-drafted the amount from my backup savings account, the account I used for property taxes. I had never noticed because I had so many auto transfers set up to manage our household that I stopped reading the individual line items. I trusted the system. I trusted her. I highlighted the car loan in red. This was not a gift. This was a liability attached to my social security number like a tumor. Next came the wedding folder. Delaney's wedding in Charleston, South Carolina, was the event of the season. It was featured on a local lifestyle blog. The photos showed Delaney and Brent looking like royalty against a backdrop of Spanish moss and historic brick. I pulled up the invoice from the venue. The initial deposit was $5,000. The check had come from my account. I remembered that phone call vividly. It was 3 weeks before the wedding. Delaney was hysterical. The venue double booked, she had sobbed. Unless we pay an upgrade fee to secure the ballroom, they are bumping us to the garden, and it is going to rain. Millie, it is going to rain on my wedding day. How much? I had asked, already reaching for my wallet. $5,000, she choked out. I paid it. But looking at the itemized breakdown now, I saw the truth. There was no double booking. There was no threat of rain. The $5,000 was listed clearly under add-ons premium lighting package and champagne tower upgrade. I felt a cold flush of anger prickle my skin. I had emptied my emergency fund so she could have a champagne tower. Then there were the flowers, $3,000 for imported peonies because the local roses looked cheap. The DJ, who required a $2,000 rush fee because Delaney fired the first one a week before the ceremony. The vintage getaway car. The customized favors. I summed up the wedding column. $22,000. At the wedding. During the toast. My father had raised a glass and said, "We are so proud of Delaney and Brent for pulling off such a magnificent celebration of love." Nobody mentioned that the celebration was subsidized by the sister sitting at table 9, wearing a dress she had bought on clearance because she could not afford anything else. I forced myself to keep going. I moved to the house tab. This was the biggest single line item, $15,000, 2 years ago. Delaney and Brent found their dream home. It was a colonial with a wraparound porch, far nicer than the ranch Noah and I lived in. They were short on the down payment. Brent has a bonus coming, Delaney had told me over coffee, her eyes bright and sincere. It is locked up in corporate approval until next quarter. If we do not put the money down by Friday, we lose the house. Can you just bridge the gap? We will wire it back the second the bonus clears. 3 months, tops. I transferred the money. 3 months passed, then 6. When I asked about it at Thanksgiving, Brent had looked at his shoes and mumbled something about restructuring and taxes. My mother had kicked me under the table. Later, in the kitchen, she scolded me. "Do not stress them out, Millie. she hissed. "They are settling into a new mortgage. You know they are good for it. Why do you have to be so transactional? Family is not a balance sheet." Family is not a balance sheet. That was their mantra. It was the shield they used to deflect any accountability. But as I looked at the data in front of me, I realized something profound. They did not actually believe that family wasn't a balance sheet. They believed I was the balance sheet. I was an asset to be liquidated whenever they had a deficit. They did not want me to be rich. If I were truly rich, I would have power. I would have lawyers. I would be intimidating. They wanted me to be solvent enough to fix their problems, but insecure enough to crave their approval. They wanted me to be the good girl, the sensible one, the fixer. If I stopped fixing, I lost my utility, and if I lost my utility, I feared I would lose my place in the family. I rubbed my eyes, which felt gritty and dry. I needed more than just bank statements. Bank statements showed the what, but they did not prove the why. To win a legal battle, or at least to survive the court of public opinion, I needed to prove intent. I opened my email archive. I logged into my old cloud storage account where my phone backups were stored. I started searching for keywords: loan, borrow, pay back, promise. The search results populated slowly, a spinning wheel of judgment, and then, there it was. It was a text thread from 4 years ago, right before the car loan incident. Delaney Millie, I am desperate. The bank says I need a cosigner or I lose the car. Please, I promise I will refinance in 6 months and get your name off it. Me, Delaney. I can't take on that risk. What if you miss a payment? Delaney, I won't. I swear. It is a loan of your credit, not your money. I will pay you back for any trouble. I will put it in writing if you want. She never put it in writing, but she had put it in a text. I scrolled down. Another thread, dated around the time of the wedding. Delaney, if you cover the venue upgrade, I will pay you back 10% interest when Brent gets his promotion. Consider it a business loan. Me, I don't want interest. I just need the principal back by October. Delaney Dunn, you have my word. Thank you for saving me. I took a screenshot, then another, then another. I found an email from Brent regarding the house down payment. Subject: bridge loan. Down payment. From Brent. Wexler email, com. To Millie. Hughes email, com, Millie, just confirming the details for the wire transfer, as discussed. This $15,000 is a short-term loan to be repaid upon receipt of my Q3 bonus. We appreciate you helping us secure the property. My heart hammered against my ribs. They had forgotten. They were so used to rewriting history to suit their narrative that they had forgotten the digital breadcrumbs they left behind. To them, these messages were just words thrown into the void to get what they wanted in the moment. They did not think I would save them. Who saves texts from their sister? An operations manager saves them. A woman who lives her life mitigating risk saves them. I created a new folder on my desktop named Evidence Final. I began dragging the screenshots and PDFs into it. Every file I added felt like I was loading a bullet into a chamber. Screenshot: wedding promise. JPG email: Brent loan, acknowledgement. PDF: bank statement, car payments, auto draft. PDF: the narrative they had built that I was the leech, that I was the one who owed them, was about to collide with the unyielding wall of objective reality. They had relied on social pressure and my own desire to be loved to keep me silent. They thought the bill for $28,000 was a clever joke, a way to humiliate me back into submission. But looking at the total at the bottom of my spreadsheet, which now included the specific dates and the interest calculations that Wade, the lawyer, had helped me outline, I knew this was no longer a family squabble. This was a foreclosure on their lies. I printed the documents. The printer hummed in the quiet house, a rhythmic, mechanical sound that felt incredibly soothing. I picked up a sticky note and wrote a summary for the wedding section. Item: venue upgrade. Cost $5,000. Claim gift. Reality loan confirmed via text message dated June 12, 2018. Status: unpaid. I stuck it to the printout. I was not just angry anymore. I was cold. A deep, Arctic chill had settled in my chest where my sisterly affection used to be. I realized that for years, I had been paying a subscription fee for a family that did not exist. I had been paying to be treated like a doormat. Well, the subscription was canceled, and the late fees were due. I stacked the papers into the black binder, the metal ring snapping shut with a satisfying click. I looked at the clock. It was 4 a.m. The sun would be up soon, in 72 hours. Wade would file the papers, but before that, I had to survive the fallout. I knew what was coming: the gaslighting, the tears, the accusations that I was ruining the family. But they were wrong. I wasn't ruining the family. I was simply presenting them with the cost of doing business. I closed the binder and ran my hand over the cover. For the first time in my life, I wasn't Millie the doormat. I wasn't Millie the bank. I was Millie the auditor, and the audit was closed. The catalyst for my transformation was not a grand epiphany or a sudden stroke of lightning. It was a question from a 7-year-old boy holding a juice box. It happened 3 weeks before the birthday party. I was in the kitchen, packing lunches for the next day. Delaney had just left after a quick stop-by that had lasted 2 hours and cost me $80 in cash because she claimed she had left her wallet at a yoga studio and needed gas to get home. Leo was sitting at the counter, swinging his legs. He watched the door close behind his aunt, then looked at me with the terrifying clarity that only children possess. "Mommy," he said, poking his straw into the foil top, "why does Aunt Delaney always take the green paper from your purse? Is she poor?" I froze. My hand hovered over a sandwich bag. It was such a simple question, devoid of malice, but it shattered the glass wall I had built around my denial. I had told myself that my financial martyrdom was a private burden, something I carried alone to keep the peace. I thought I was shielding my husband and children from the toxicity, but Leo was watching. He was learning. He was internalizing a lesson that I had never intended to teach that in the Hughes family. Love is a currency, and mommy is the ATM. He was watching his mother be strip-mined for parts, and he was learning that this was normal. That was the moment the good daughter died. I did not yell. I did not chase Delaney down the driveway. I finished packing the lunches. I kissed Leo on the forehead. Then, I went into the bedroom, opened my laptop, and began the quiet work of decoupling my life from theirs. It started with the passwords. For a decade, I had been the family IT department. My parents, Delaney, and even Brent used variants of my passwords for their streaming services, their cloud storage, and even some of their online shopping accounts because it is just easier if Millie manages it. I changed them all. I did not announce it. I did not send a mass email explaining why. I simply logged into Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, and the family cloud drive, and I changed the passwords to a randomized string of 32 characters that looked like someone had smashed their face against a keyboard. Then, I moved the money. I opened a new checking account at a completely different bank credit union of Ohio, a place where nobody in my family banked. I rerouted my direct deposit from Crestwood. I transferred the bulk of our savings. I left just enough in the old joint account, the one my mother had access to for emergencies, to keep it open, but not enough to cover a crisis. It felt illicit. It felt like I was having an affair, sneaking around behind the backs of the people I was supposed to trust. But with every click, with every confirmation screen, I felt the rope around my neck loosen by a millimeter. Noah watched me from the doorway of the home office. He did not cheer. He did not say, "I told you so." He just watched, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. "Are you going to tell them?" he asked. "No," I said, my eyes glued to the screen as I downloaded 5 years of PDF bank statements. "If I tell them, they will panic. They will guilt me. They will invent an emergency to test my resolve. I need to be ready before they know the vault is closed." Noah walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. It was heavy and warm. "I do not need you to go to war, Millie," he said quietly. "I do not need you to burn the village down. I just need you to be respected. I need you to stop setting yourself on fire to keep them warm." "I know," I said. "I am done burning." 2 days later, I took a personal day from work. I did not tell anyone where I was going. I drove 45 minutes to Hawthorne County, crossing the river, putting physical distance between myself and the suffocating gravity of Riverton Ridge. I had an appointment with Wade Harrington. I had found Wade's name on a legal form for victims of financial abuse. He wasn't a strip mall lawyer who handled DUIs and slip and falls. He was a specialist in forensic accounting and civil litigation. His office was in a glass building that smelled of expensive coffee and aggressive air conditioning. When I sat down in his conference room, I felt small. I was wearing my work blazer and holding a messy stack of papers. Wade sat opposite me, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. He did not offer me platitudes. He did not ask me how I felt. "Tell me the objective," Wade said. He had a notepad and a fountain pen. "Are we recovering assets? Are we protecting against future liability? Or are we looking for criminal charges?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I just want to know where I stand. I want to know if I'm crazy." I pushed the stack of papers toward him. It was a mess printouts of emails, bank transfers, text messages. Wade spent 20 minutes reading in silence. The only sound was the scratching of his pen and the hum of the ventilation. Finally, he looked up. His expression was not pitying. It was clinical. "You are not crazy, Mrs. Hughes," he said. "You are being bled, and based on these promissory notes, and yes, a text message constitutes a promissory note in this jurisdiction. If the intent is clear, you are owed a significant amount of capital." "I don't want to sue them," I said instinctively. The idea of dragging my mother into court made my stomach turn. "I just want out, but I'm afraid they talk about me. They ruin reputations. Delaney, she is good at spinning stories." Wade nodded. "The best defense against a story is a document. We need to organize this. We need to build a firewall." He stood up and walked to a whiteboard. He drew 4 columns. "We are going to categorize every dollar," he explained. "Column 1, gifts. These are lost. Let them go. Column 2, loans. Anything where there is a verbal or written agreement of repayment. Column 3, bailments and surety. This includes the car you co-signed for. Column 4, theft. Anything taken without permission." We spent 3 hours working. It was grueling. I had to relive every bad decision, every moment of weakness. But Wade was a machine. He forced me to look at the numbers without emotion. "Stop calling it helping back," he corrected me when I described the $15,000 for the house down payment. "That is an unsecured bridge loan. Call it what it is." By the time I left his office, I had a plan. I was not going to attack. I was going to compile. I would build a dossier so thick and so irrefutable that if they ever tried to come for me, I would have a nuclear deterrent. But I made a mistake. I underestimated them. A week later, Delaney called me. Her voice was bright, bubbly, and completely devoid of the tension that usually defined our conversations. "Millie," she chirped, "I have the best news. Mom and Dad and I were talking, and we realized we have not celebrated you enough. For your 30th, we are going to throw you a huge party, a real bash, at the Tuscan Olive." My blood ran cold. Delaney did not throw parties for other people. Delaney threw parties where she was the center of attention. If she was throwing a party for me, there was a catch. "You don't have to do that," I said, gripping the phone. "I just want a quiet dinner with Noah and the kids." "Nonsense," she insisted. "It is already booked. Invitations are out. All the aunts and uncles are coming. It is going to be a night of revelation. We want to show everyone exactly who you are." Who you are. The phrasing triggered an alarm in my reptilian brain. It wasn't who you have become or how much we love you. It was who you are. It sounded like an exposure. I agreed. I had to. If I refused, I would look ungrateful, and they would spin that against me too. "See, we tried to do something nice, and she spat in our faces." I hung up and sat in my car, shaking. Something was wrong. The air pressure had dropped. That evening, I was at my parents' house to drop off some mail that had been sent to my address by mistake. My mother was in the garden. Her iPad was sitting on the kitchen counter. Unlocked. I am not a snoop. I respect privacy, but the screen lit up with a notification from a group chat named Hughes Family Updates. I was not in that group chat. I stepped closer. The message preview was from Delaney. Everything is set for Saturday. The invoice is printed. We are going to teach her a lesson she will never forget. She thinks she can cut us off. Wait until everyone sees how much she actually owes us for putting up with her. My breath hitched. I tapped the screen. The thread opened. I scrolled up. It was a massacre. For weeks, Delaney had been seeding the narrative. She had been telling cousins, aunts, and family friends that I was the one borrowing money. She claimed I was drowning in debt, and that she and Brent had been secretly bailing me out for years. Delaney yesterday, 4:12 p.m. It breaks my heart, but Millie has become so entitled. She thinks the family money is her piggy bank. The party is an intervention. We have to shame her into growing up. It is tough love. Aunt Linda. Yesterday, 4:15 p.m. You are so brave for doing this. Delaney. She needs a wake-up call. Brent yesterday, 4:20 p.m. We just want her to take responsibility. The bill is just a prop. But hopefully, it shocks her back to reality. I put the iPad down. My hands were trembling. But not from fear. I was trembling with rage. They were not just throwing a party. They were staging a public execution. They had projected all of their sins onto me. They were going to present me with a fake bill for $28,000 to cover up the fact that they owed me nearly $500,000. They were going to humiliate me in front of everyone I knew, using a prop to cement the lie that I was the leech. I walked out of the house without saying a word to my mother. I got into my car and drove to the end of the block. Then, I called Wade. It is a trap, I said. My voice was steady, terrifyingly so. The party. It is a setup. They are going to serve me with a fake invoice in front of the whole family to discredit me before I can ask for my money back. Wade was silent for a moment. That is aggressive, he noted. What do you want to do? We can file an injunction. We can skip the party. No, I said. If I skip it, they win. They tell the story without me there to defend it. I have to go. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I did not look like the sensible sister anymore. I looked like a predator. Wade, I said, I need you to come to dinner on Saturday. I do not do social calls with clients. Millie, it is not a social call, I said. I want you to book a table at the Tuscan Olive. Sit near us. Bring the file. Bring the red binder. Bring everything we organized. You want to serve them at the party? Wade asked. I could hear a hint of intrigue in his voice. No, I said. I want them to serve me first. I want them to play their card. I want them to think they have won. And then, when they have everyone's attention, I want to bury them. I will be there at 6:30, Wade said. Bring the discovery paperwork, I added. And Wade, wear your best suit. I hung up. I drove home to Noah. I told him everything. I told him about the texts, the lies, the intervention. We are not going, Noah said immediately, his face flushing with anger. I am not letting them do that to you. We are going, I corrected him. I went to the closet and pulled out the black tote bag I used for work. I emptied it of my laptop and notebooks. I walked to the safe in our bedroom closet. I spun the dial. Inside sat the thick black binder, holding the truth of 10 years of exploitation. I placed the binder in the bag. It fit perfectly. I am going to that party. Noah, I said. And I am going to accept their gift. I am going to accept the platform they are building for me. They think they are building a stage to hang me on. I zipped the bag shut. The sound was like a zipper on a body bag. They have no idea, I whispered, that they are building their own gallows. The air in the private room of the Tuscan Olive was thick enough to choke on. It was a cocktail of cheap perfume, garlic butter, and the simmering, electric anticipation of a crowd waiting for blood. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, watching my sister work the room. She was a master conductor of social energy. She had waited until the wine bottles were empty and the bellies were full, until the inhibition of our relatives had been eroded by Pinot Grigio and familial resentment. Delaney stood at the head of the table, the cream-colored folder in her hand. She did not just hold it, she brandished it. She looked at me with eyes that shone with a toxic mixture of pity and malice. This was her stage. I was just the prop. "We all love Millie," Delaney said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "But real love means honesty, and honestly, we are tired of the secrets. We are tired of carrying the weight." She handed the paper to Leo, my son. I watched the scene play out in slow motion, a nightmare I had anticipated, but was still gut-wrenching to witness. When Leo read the number $28,000, the room did not just applaud, they exhaled. It was a collective release of tension. They finally had a villain, and it was the woman who had spent 10 years silently fixing their flat tires. My Aunt Linda leaned over to my mother and whispered loud enough for the next table to hear, "I knew it. I knew she was bleeding you dry." Brent, sitting next to Delaney, let out a chuckle. It was a nervous, wet sound. "It is just a reality check, Millie," he said, grinning at the room. "Consider it tough love." I looked at Noah. His jaw was clenched so hard I could see the muscle jumping in his cheek. He was ready to flip the table. He was ready to scream. I placed a hand on his forearm. The skin was hot. "Take Leo," I said softly. My voice was steady, surprising even me. "Take him to the car, now." "Millie," Noah started. "Go," I commanded. I did not look at him. I kept my eyes locked on Delaney. "I do not want him to see this." Noah understood. He scooped Leo up, whispering something about a forgotten toy in the car, and maneuvered him out the side door before the applause had fully died down. Now, the field was clear. I stood up. I did not rush. I smoothed the front of my dress. The room went quiet, expecting a tearful defense. They expected me to crumble, to apologize, to beg for a payment plan for a debt I did not owe. I reached down and lifted the black binder onto the table. It hit the wood with a heavy, dull thud that echoed in the silence. It was not a flimsy folder. It was 3 inches of reinforced cardboard and steel rings, packed with high-density paper. It looked like a weapon because, in my hands, it was, "If today is the day we are playing the bill game," I said, my voice projecting clearly to the back of the room where my father was hiding behind a wine glass. "Then I also have a bill." Delaney's smile faltered. "What is that, your diary?" "It is an audit," I said. I flipped the cover open. The first page was a summary sheet, printed in high-contrast, bold type. "You claim I owe the family $28,000 based on a handwritten estimate of dinners and birthday gifts," I said, looking down at the data. "However, according to bank records, wire transfers, and notarized loan agreements dating back to 2015, the actual flow of capital is quite different." I looked up. I made eye contact with Brent. "Let us start with the wedding," I said. I flipped to the first tab. "October 12th, 2018, I read. "Item venue lighting and champagne upgrade. Amount $5,450. Paid via direct wire transfer from Millie Hughes to Charleston Eventos LLC." I pulled out a plastic sleeve document. It was a photocopy of the check, stapled to a printout of a text message. Text from Delaney, dated September 20th, 2018. I read, quote, "Please, Millie, I will pay you back the second we get the wedding money. I swear on my life." End quote. I looked at Delaney. Status unpaid. Interest accrued at the federal statutory rate, $1,200. "That was a gift," Delaney shrieked. Her poise was cracking. The Benevolent Sister Act was dissolving. "You said you wanted to help." "I said I would loan you the money," I corrected her, my tone flat. "And you said you would pay it back. That makes it a contract." I flipped the page. The sound was sharp, like a slap. "Item 2, the house," I announced. The room was deathly silent. My mother had lowered her wine glass. My father was staring at the tablecloth. "June 4th, 2021, I continued. $15,000, labeled in the wire transfer memo as bridge loan for down payment, recipient Wexler joint checking. I turned the binder toward Brent. Brent, I said, you sent me an email on June 5th. Would you like me to read it? Or do you remember what it said? Brent's face had drained of all color. He looked like a man who had just realized he was standing on a trapdoor. Millie, come on, he stammered. This is a party. We were just joking with the invoice. I am not joking, I said. You wrote Millie. Thank you for the loan. We will restructure and pay you back by Christmas. That was 3 Christmases ago. I flipped another section of pages. Auto loan, I read. Co-signed in 2019, current status, 14 missed payments, total penalties deducted from my secondary savings account, $4,200. Liar, Delaney shouted. She slammed her hand on the table. You are making this up. You printed a bunch of fake papers to ruin my night. She looked around the room, desperate for allies. She is jealous. She has always been jealous of my success. She is lying. Some of the relatives looked unsure. Aunt Linda looked back and forth between us, her mouth hanging open. The narrative was shifting, but Delaney was fighting to hold on to the victimhood. She is mentally unstable, Delaney cried, pointing a manicured finger at me. Look at her, who brings a binder to a birthday party. She is obsessed with me. That was the cue. At the table to my left, the man in the charcoal suit stood up. He had been so quiet, so still, that most of the room had forgotten he was there. Wade Harrington buttoned his jacket with a single, fluid motion. He picked up his briefcase and walked into the center of the room. He did not look like family. He looked like a shark in a tank of goldfish. She did not bring the binder because she is obsessed, Mrs. Wexler, Wade said. His voice was a rich baritone that commanded instant obedience. She brought it because I advised her to. Delaney froze. Who are you? My name is Wade Harrington, he said, placing a business card on the tablecloth next to the birthday cake. I am retained counsel for Mrs. Millie Hughes. A gasp went through the room. My mother put a hand to her throat. A lawyer, Millie. You brought a lawyer to dinner. I brought a witness, I said. Wade opened his briefcase and pulled out a single, crisp file. The binder Mrs. Hughes is holding contains copies, Wade stated, addressing the room, but looking directly at Brent. My office holds the originals. We have the bank certifications. We have the IP logs for the emails. We have the digital signatures on the loan agreements. He turned to Delaney. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. This is not a family dispute, Wade said. This is a collections matter. The total amount owed, including principal and interest, exceeds $400,000. That moves this out of small claims and into civil litigation. Delaney's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. She looked at Brent, but Brent was staring at the table, refusing to meet her eyes. You have 72 hours, Wade said. 72 hours to contact my office with a repayment proposal. If we do not hear from you by Tuesday at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we will file the suit, and once we file, the public record will include every email, every text, and every financial statement in that binder. He let the threat hang in the air. It was not a threat of violence. It was a threat of exposure. For a family that lived on appearances, it was a death sentence. 72 hours, Wade repeated. I looked at my mother. She was crying now. But they were silent tears of shock, not the manipulative sobbing I was used to. She looked at me as if she had never seen me before, and in a way, she hadn't. She had never seen Millie the adult. She had only ever seen Millie the resource. I closed the binder. I did not ask for an apology. I did not ask for them to admit they were wrong. I knew they wouldn't, not yet. Happy birthday to me, I said quietly. I picked up the binder. It felt lighter now. We are leaving, I announced. I turned my back on them. I walked toward the door. I could feel their eyes on me. Dozens of them, burning into my spine. I expected someone to stop me. I expected my father to roar. or Delaney to scream, or my mother to chase after me. But there was only silence. It was the silence of a room that had been stripped of its illusions. As I pushed through the heavy wooden doors and out into the cool night air of the parking lot, I took the first deep breath of my 30s. The air smelled of rain and asphalt, but to me, it smelled like victory. Noah was waiting by the car, the engine running. I got in. I did not look back at the restaurant. I did not look back at the people who had tried to break me. I just looked forward, at the road illuminated by our headlights, and nodded. "Drive," I said. The silence I had fought for the night before did not last. It was shattered at 6:14 in the morning by the aggressive vibration of my phone against the nightstand wood. It was not an alarm. It was the first volley of artillery in a war I had officially declared. I rolled over, my eyes gritty from a restless sleep, and looked at the screen. "Mom, you humiliated your sister. I hope you are proud of yourself. Do not bother coming for Sunday dinner." I stared at the words. There was no question about what had happened, no curiosity about why I had brought a lawyer, no concern that I might actually have a legitimate grievance. There was only the immediate, reflexive defense of Delaney. In Patricia Hughes' world, the crime was not the exploitation. The crime was the exposure. I did not reply. I placed the phone face down. 10 minutes later, it rang. It was my father. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Gordon Hughes did not like being ignored. He viewed a decline button as a personal insult. I got out of bed, leaving Noah sleeping, and walked into the kitchen. The house was quiet, bathed in the gray light of a Sunday dawn. I made coffee. By the time the pot was full, I had 12 missed calls and 4 voicemails. I played one on speaker while I poured the coffee. "Millie, pick up the phone." My father's voice boomed, sounding tinny and distorted. "This nonsense has gone far enough. You are going to call your sister and apologize. You are going to tell everyone that that binder was a joke or a mistake. Do you hear me? You are tearing this family apart over money. Since when did you become so greedy? Call me, now." Greedy, the word hung in the air, mixing with the smell of brewing coffee. I took a sip. It was bitter. Then came the text from Delaney. It was not a short burst of anger like my mother's. It was a novel. A wall of gray text bubbles that scrolled up my screen for what felt like miles. Delaney. "I feel so sorry for you. Millie, I really do. I know this is not you. This is Noah. He has been poisoning you against us for years because he is jealous that Brent is successful, and he is just a mechanic. You used to be kind. You used to be generous. Now you are just bitter. Do you really think a few spreadsheets change the fact that we are family? You ruined my night. You ruined everything. I hope the money keeps you warm at night because you just lost your sister." I sat on the bar stool and read it twice. It was a masterclass in deflection. She had shifted the narrative instantly. In her mind, she had not stolen from me. Noah had corrupted me. I did not reply to her either. I was done negotiating with terrorists. Instead, I opened my laptop. The siege had begun, and I needed to shore up the perimeter. I logged into the utility portal for the family lake cabin, a property my parents owned but for which I had managed the bills for 6 years. I removed my credit card from the autopay. I logged into the streaming services. I saw that Delaney was currently watching a reality show on my account. I hit sign out of all devices. Then I changed the password to a string of random characters that I did not even bother to memorize. I went through my Amazon account. I found a recurring subscription for high-end dog food being shipped to Delaney's address. I canceled it, click by click. I was severing the invisible umbilical cords that they had used to feed off me. It was surgical work. It was quiet work. Then, my phone buzzed with a different ringtone. It was Brent. I hesitated. Brent was the weak link. He was the one who knew the legal threat was real because his name was on the emails Wade had cited. I answered. "Millie." His voice was a whisper. He sounded like he was hiding in a closet. "Is Wade there?" "No," I said. "It is 7 in the morning. Brent." "Look, we need to talk," he said. His voice was shaking. "Without the lawyers, just us. We can work this out. I can get you some money, not the whole amount. Obviously, that is insane. But I can get you something. Just call Wade off. Please, Delaney is on a rampage. She is talking about suing you for defamation. She can try, I said calmly. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation, Brent, and I have the receipts. We can't have a lawsuit. Millie, he pleaded, I am up for a promotion. If my company finds out I am being sued for fraud, and that is what this looks like, I am done. Please, just come over. We can sit down like adults. We sat down like adults last night, I said. And you handed me a bill for $28,000. That was Delaney's idea, he cracked. I told her it was too much. I just went along with it to keep the peace. Then you should have no problem explaining that to the judge, I said. You have 72 hours to send a proposal to Wade. Do not call me again. I hung up. My hand was shaking. But not from fear. It was adrenaline. I had just drawn a line in the sand that I had been too afraid to draw for a decade. An hour later, the gravel in our driveway crunched under tires. I looked out the window. My parents' Buick had pulled up right behind Noah's truck, blocking him in. They got out. My mother was wearing large sunglasses, presumably to hide swollen eyes. My father looked like a storm cloud in a polo shirt. They marched to the front door. The pounding started immediately. Bang, bang, bang. Millie, open this door, my father shouted. Noah came into the kitchen, his hair messy, wearing only sweatpants. He looked ready to fight. I will handle it, I said. Stay with Leo and Sophie. Keep them in the playroom. Put headphones on them. I am not letting them scream at you, Noah said. They won't scream inside, I said, because they aren't coming inside. I walked to the front door. I unlocked the deadbolt and opened it, but I stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door shut behind me, blocking the entrance with my body. My mother tried to push past me. Move, Millie. We are going to sit down at the kitchen table and fix this. I did not move. I planted my feet. No, I said. You are not coming in. My father's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. Excuse me. This is my house. I paid for the down payment on this house. No, you didn't, I said. I paid for the down payment on your vacation condo. You gave us $500 for a moving truck 7 years ago. Do you want me to get the binder to check the exact date? The mention of the binder made him flinch. How can you be so cruel? My mother wailed. She dropped the aggression and switched instantly to martyrdom. She clasped her hands together. We raised you. We sacrificed everything for you. We drove you to soccer practice. We paid for your braces, and now you are treating us like strangers over money. You are charging your own mother for being a mother. I am not charging you for being a mother, I said. I am charging you for the loans you promised to pay back. I am charging you for the theft. It wasn't theft, she cried. It was family. We help each other. When did you become so transactional? I became transactional when you handed my son an invoice for his mother's existence, I said. My voice was low, but it cut through her wailing like a razor. You tried to shame me in front of 30 people. You tried to turn my son against me. We were trying to teach you a lesson, my father barked. You have been distant. You have been cold. I have been working, I said. I have been working to pay for Delaney's lifestyle, but that is over. You are ungrateful, my mother spat. After all the love we gave you, I do not want your love if the price tag is $400,000, I said. And I will not pay my debt to you by letting my children watch their mother be disrespected in her own home. You have 48 hours left to contact Wade. Get off my porch. My father looked like he wanted to hit me. He raised a hand, pointing a finger in my face. If you go through with this, Millie, you are dead to us. Do you understand? No Christmas, no birthdays. You will be alone. I have been alone in this family for 10 years, I said. I just finally stopped paying for the privilege. I turned around, opened the door, and stepped inside. I locked the deadbolt. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door and listened. I heard them arguing on the porch. I heard my mother sobbing something about, "What will the neighbors think?" Then I heard the car doors slam, and the Buick reverse down the driveway. I did not cry. I went back to the kitchen and finished my coffee, but the assault was not over. It was just shifting fronts. By noon, the digital smear campaign was in full swing. Delaney had evidently spent the morning on the phone. I received a notification from Facebook. My cousin Sarah had tagged me in a post, but when I went to look, I was blocked. Then came a text from my Aunt Linda. Aunt Linda, I heard about what you are doing to your sister. Suing her because you are jealous of her business. I always knew you were petty. Millie, but this is sick. Do not expect us at Leo's birthday. Then another from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Cousin Mike Delaney says you are embezzling from your company and trying to cover it up by extorting the family. Is that true? You need help. They were rewriting reality in real time. Delaney was spinning a story where I was the villain, a greedy, mentally unstable embezzler who was attacking her saintly sister. She was inoculating the family against the truth. She knew that if the binder's contents became public, she was finished. So she had to destroy my credibility first. I felt a spike of panic. Lies travel faster than the truth, and Delaney was a sprinter. They are saying I am a thief, I told Noah, showing him the text from Mike. She is telling people I am stealing from Crestwood. That is actionable, Noah said darkly. Tell Wade. I will, I said. But the damage to my reputation, these are people I grew up with. My phone pinged again. An email notification. I expected another hate message. I braced myself. The subject line was simply F.D. Party Prep. The sender was an email address I did not recognize immediately. G. Hughes, 88 email. Com. I frowned. J. Hughes. That was my second cousin, Jennifer. She lived in Oregon. She was the black sheep of the family because she had refused to go to college and instead opened a tattoo parlor. The family rarely spoke to her. I opened the email. There was no text in the body, just a single attachment. It was a screenshot of a text conversation between Jennifer and Delaney, dated 2 weeks ago. Delaney. You should come to Ohio for the 30th. It is going to be epic. Jennifer, I can't afford the flight. What is the big deal? Delaney, I am finally going to put Millie in her place. Brent and I printed this fake bill for $28,000. We are going to present it to her in front of everyone. It is going to be hilarious. I am going to make her cry and then make her apologize for being such a drag. She's been acting so superior lately with her budgeting. I am going to break her. Jen, it will be the best show in town. Plus, if I shame her enough, she will probably pay for my Europe trip just to make me like her again. I stared at the screen. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just a reaction to the moment. It wasn't just tough love gone wrong. It was premeditated malice. She had planned to break me. She had planned to use my own insecurity to extort a European vacation out of me, and she had put it in writing. Jennifer had sent me the smoking gun. She had sent me the proof that this wasn't a family dispute. It was a conspiracy to commit emotional and financial extortion. I forwarded the email to Wade immediately. Then I texted Jennifer back. Me. Thank you. Jennifer burned them down. Millie. They did the same thing to me 10 years ago. Do not let them up. I put the phone down. The panic was gone. The guilt was gone. The fear of being alone was gone. Delaney had wanted a show. She had wanted to break me. She had no idea that she had just handed me the hammer. The silence that followed the weekend's chaos was not peaceful. It was heavy, like the atmospheric pressure drop before a hailstorm. By Monday afternoon, the hysterical texts from my mother and the accusatory Facebook posts from my cousins had slowed to a trickle, replaced by a sullen, watchful waiting. They were waiting for me to break. They were waiting for the guilt to fester. But I was not sitting in guilt. I was sitting in my home office with a cup of black coffee, staring at a PDF that Wade Harrington had emailed me 10 minutes ago. My phone on the desk buzzed. It was Wade. Mrs. Hughes, Wade said. His voice was different today. It lacked the theatricality of the dinner party. It was sharper, faster. It was the voice of a lawyer who had found blood in the water. Are you looking at page 14 of the discovery file I just sent? I am looking at it, I said. It is the addendum for the auto loan. The restructuring agreement from last year. Correct, Wade said. Look at the signature block at the bottom of the page. The date is August 12th, 2024. I zoomed in on the screen. The signature read, Millie Hughes. It was looped, slightly slanted to the right, with the distinctive cross on the H that I had used since high school. I see it, I said. Did you sign that document? Millie, Wade asked. I stared at the black ink pixels. August 12th. I checked my digital calendar. August 12th was a Tuesday. I was in Chicago for a logistics conference. I had been in a seminar about supply chain redundancies from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. No, I said, a cold chill spreading from the base of my neck down my spine. I was out of state. I did not sign this. I thought so, Wade said. The pressure on the pen stroke is wrong. The loop on the G in Hughes is too wide. It is a good forgery. Millie, but it is a forgery. And it is not just a signature on a birthday card. This document extended the term of the loan by 24 months and capitalized the outstanding interest. It effectively increased your liability by $6,000 without your consent. I felt the room tilt slightly. Up until this moment, I had viewed my sister as a leech, a narcissist, a user. I thought she was lazy and entitled, someone who took advantage of my inability to say no. But forgery. That was not laziness. That was a felony. That was active, predatory malice. How did she get this? I whispered. The bank requires a wet signature or a verified digital ID. That is what we are going to find out, Wade said. I am going to subpoena the full loan origination file from the lender. I want to see the IP addresses, the metadata, and the scan logs. But Millie, you need to think back. August of last year. Did she have access to your documents? Did she have access to your ID? I closed my eyes, forcing my brain to rewind. August. The summer had been brutal. The heat was oppressive. Then, the memory clicked into place like a slide in a projector. It wasn't August 12th. It was a week before. Leo had come down with a violent stomach bug. I was working from home, trying to manage a crisis with a trucking vendor while cleaning vomit off the living room rug. I was exhausted, smelling of bleach, my hair in a messy bun. Delaney had come over. She had breezed in, looking fresh and manicured, carrying a Starbucks cup. She didn't offer to help with Leo. She had said, "Oh, poor baby, don't get me sick," and stayed in the kitchen. "Millie," she had said, her voice urgent, "my printer is jammed, and I have to get these contract renewals signed for the realty group by 5 or I lose the commission. Can I just print a few things on your machine?" I was on the phone with a driver in Nebraska. I had waved her toward the office. "Fine, just be quick." She had spent 20 minutes in my office. I remembered hearing the rhythmic whir-chicky-whir of my laser printer. Later, she had come into the living room where I was holding a sleeping, feverish Leo. She was holding a stack of papers. "You are a lifesaver," she had said. "Hey, since I'm here, Mom wanted me to have you sign that insurance rider for the cabin. She says the premium went down, but they need all the owners to initial it." She held out a clipboard. She lifted the bottom edge of a thick stack of papers. "Just right there, and there." I didn't read it. I was holding a sick child. I trusted my sister. I trusted my mother. I signed where she pointed, grateful that she was handling a family administrative task so I didn't have to. I opened my eyes. The office was quiet, but the betrayal was screaming. "She tricked me," I said to Wade. "She came over when Leo was sick. She told me it was insurance paperwork for the cabin. She slipped the loan restructuring agreement into the stack." "That is what is known as fraud in the inducement," Wade said. "And since she used the mail or wire services to transmit it to the bank, it is wire fraud. We are no longer talking about a civil dispute over a wedding venue. Millie, if we pursue this, she could go to prison." I looked at the signature on the screen, my name, stolen and weaponized against me. "I want the full file," I said. My voice was devoid of emotion. I was surprised by how steady I sounded. "I want to know everything she signed my name to." "I am drafting the demand letter now," Wade said. "But Millie, This changes the posture. We are not just asking for money back, we are holding a grenade. You need to decide if you are willing to pull the pin. She pulled the pin when she printed that invoice, I said. I am just throwing it back. I hung up. I did not scream. I did not throw the coffee mug against the wall. Panic is for people who do not have a plan. Rage is for people who feel helpless. I felt neither. I felt a terrifying clarity. This was not a family dynamic. It was a crime scene. Noah walked in. He saw the look on my face and stopped. "What is it?" he asked. "She forged my signature," I said. "She extended the car loan without telling me so she could lower her monthly payments and stick me with the interest. She tricked me into signing it when Leo was sick." Noah's face darkened. He did not say a word. He walked over to the window and looked out at the street, his hands balling into fists. "That is it," he said finally. "No more talking. No more let's resolve this. We are done." "Wade is pulling the files," I said. "Good," Noah said. He turned to me. "But from now on, you do not speak to them, not a word. If they come to the door, we call the police. If they call, we let it go to voicemail. Everything in writing, everything through Wade. I do not care if your mother is dying in the hospital if they want to tell you. They can send an email to your lawyer." "Agreed," I said. I spent the next hour combing through my own digital archives. I searched my sent folder for scans. I found it. An email sent from my scanner's automated address to Delaney, Wexler email. "Come on August 5th. Subject scan doc 004. I opened the attachment. It was a 20-page PDF. Buried on page 18 was the loan restructuring agreement. The title at the top of the page was Waiver of Grace Period and Capitalization of Interest. It was formatted to look dense and boring, the kind of banking boilerplate eyes gloss over. But there was something else. On page 3 of the scan, there was a letter from a credit card company. It was addressed to me, but the account number was not one I recognized. "Dear Ms. Hughes, regarding your inquiry about increasing the limit on your Platinum Rewards card, ending in 4599, I checked my wallet. I did not have a card ending in 4599. I pulled my credit report again. I looked at the closed accounts. There it was. A card opened 6 years ago. Closed 3 years ago. The address on file. My parents' house. My heart hammered. It wasn't just Delaney. I forwarded the PDF to Wade with a note. "Check this credit card number. I think there is more." My computer pinged. A new email from Wade. Subject formal, cease desist. Preservation of evidence attached is the draft we are sending via courier to Delaney and Brent, and to your parents. It demands a preservation of all financial records, devices, and communications. It also puts them on notice that any further defamatory statements regarding your employment or mental health will result in immediate litigation for damages. It was a war declaration written on legal letterhead. "Send it," I typed back. The afternoon dragged on. The house felt like a bunker. I kept expecting the phone to ring, for the lawn to fill with angry relatives, but the silence held. It was the silence of the enemy regrouping. Then, at 4:30, my phone vibrated. It was a text message. I looked at the sender, Brent. I felt a surge of annoyance. I had told him not to contact me. I was about to delete it without reading, but the preview text caught my eye. "Brent, I am sitting in my car. I can't go inside. I think I'm going to throw up." I hesitated. This wasn't the defensive, whining Brent from the morning. This sounded like a man in shock. "Me. Contact my lawyer. Brent. I can't tell a lawyer this. Not yet. Millie. I swear to God I didn't know. Me. Didn't know what? That you were spending my money, Brent. No. I didn't know it was your money." I stared at the screen. What was he talking about? "Me, stop playing games. You sent me emails acknowledging the loans. Brent, I sent emails thanking you for facilitating the loans. Delaney told me you were managing the family trust." Me. What family trust? The 3 dots of his typing bubble appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. He was writing, erasing, rewriting. "Brent Delaney told me that your grandmother left a trust fund. She said you were the executor because you're the responsible one. She said the money for the wedding, the house, the car, she said it was from the trust. She said we just had to route it through your accounts for tax purposes. My phone almost slipped from my hand. My grandmother had died 10 years ago. She left me her collection of porcelain cats and $500 in a savings bond. There was no trust. There was no secret fund. Brent. She told me that you were the one borrowing against the trust. She said you had taken out loans against the principal, and that is why you were always stressed about money. She said the $28,000 bill was to help you balance the books of the trust so you wouldn't get in trouble with the IRS. I sat back in my chair, the air rushing out of my lungs. It was diabolical. Delaney hadn't just used me. She had constructed an entire alternate reality. To Brent, she wasn't a mooch. She was a beneficiary. To Brent, I wasn't the victim. I was the uptight executor who had mismanaged the funds and needed bailing out. That explained everything. It explained why Brent had been so smug at the party. He thought he was helping me fix my accounting error. He thought the bill was a clever way to write off the debt I supposedly owed the trust. Me, Brent, there is no trust. Brent, I know. I just looked at the bank files Wade cited. I saw the source of funds. It's your payroll. It's your savings. It's not a trust. She lied to you. Brent, she told me she was paying the mortgage. She told me she paid off the car. Millie, where did my bonus checks go? I felt a sudden, unexpected pity for him. He was a fool. Yes, he was weak. Yes, but he was also a victim. Delaney had been running a Ponzi scheme of emotions, robbing Peter to pay Paul, and telling both of them they were rich. Brent, she is in the kitchen right now telling your mom that you faked the binder. But I know. I checked our joint account. It's empty. Millie, she drained us too. This was the crack in the dam. Brent wasn't an ally yet, but he was no longer an enemy. He was a man who had just realized his wife was a con artist. I took a screenshot of the conversation and sent it to Wade. Wade, don't engage further. This proves lack of informed consent on his part, but it also makes him a star witness. If she defrauded him too. We have a pattern. I looked at the phone. Me. Get a lawyer. Brent. A different one than hers. I put the phone down. The narrative had shifted again. It wasn't just Millie versus the family. It was the truth versus the lie. And the lie was starting to eat its own tail. I walked into the living room. Noah was on the floor building a Lego castle with Leo. It was a scene of domestic peace that felt fragile, like it was protected by a thin sheet of glass. Noah, I said. It is worse than we thought. He looked up. There is no trust fund, I said. But Brent thinks there is. She stole his money too. Noah stood up. So he is turning on her. I think so, I said. I think the house of cards is falling down. Good, Noah said. Let it fall. I looked at the binder on the counter. It was no longer just a collection of debts. It was the script for a tragedy. Delaney had built her entire life, her marriage, and her reputation on a foundation of lies that I had unknowingly subsidized. Now, I was pulling the funding, and the collapse was going to be spectacular. I felt a vibration in my pocket again. Another email. It wasn't from Wade. It wasn't from Brent. It was a notification from my bank. Alert. An attempt was made to access your account ending in 8890 from a device located in Riverton Ridge. Oh, access denied due to incorrect password. She was trying to get in. She was panicked. She needed money, or she needed to delete evidence. I smiled. A cold, sharp smile that didn't reach my eyes. Try again. Delaney, I whispered to the empty room. I changed the locks. I agreed to meet Brent at a truck stop diner off Interstate 71, 10 miles outside of town. It was a place smelling of diesel fuel and burnt bacon, illuminated by flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped insects. It was the kind of place where people went to be anonymous, where nobody from the Riverton Ridge Country Club set would ever be caught dead. That was exactly why I chose it. I arrived 15 minutes early. I ordered a black coffee and placed the black binder on the Formica table. It sat there between the salt shaker and the ketchup bottle. a silent monolith of facts in a room full of transients. When Brent walked in, he looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 48 hours. His polo shirt was wrinkled, his eyes were rimmed with red, and he had the desperate, hunted look of an animal that realizes it is trapped in a cage it helped build. He slid into the booth opposite me, not making eye contact. "Thanks for meeting me," he muttered. He didn't order anything. He just wrapped his hands around a glass of water, his knuckles white. "You have 24 hours left on the deadline, Brent," I said. My voice was low, designed not to carry over the noise of the trucker eating meatloaf 2 booths away. "Why are we here?" Brent looked up. His face was pale, the tan he cultivated so carefully now looking sallow and sickly. "I need to know the truth, Millie," he said. "Not the lawyer version, not Delaney's version. I need to know what actually happened with the money." "You have the files," I said. "I read them," he said. "But they don't make sense. Delaney told me that the trust fund was complicated. She said that because you were the executor, you had to move money around to avoid tax penalties. She said that when we borrowed money, we were actually accessing her share of the inheritance, but it had to look like a loan from you on paper." I stared at him. The creativity of the lie was almost impressive. She had turned my generosity into a bureaucratic necessity. "There is no trust fund, Brent," I said clearly. "There never was. Grandma left us porcelain cats and $500. That is it." "I know," he whispered. "I called the probate court this morning. I checked the public records." He swallowed hard. "So, the money, the down payment on the house, the car, the wedding that was just you." "It was my salary," I said. "It was Noah's overtime. It was the college fund for my children." I opened the binder. I did not do it with a flourish this time. I did it with the clinical precision of a surgeon exposing a wound. I flipped to tab 4. "Look at this," I said, pointing to a printed email chain. It was dated 3 years ago. From Delaney to Millie, subject, "Please help Millie. I know I owe you for the car, but Brent really wants this house. If you can front us the deposit, I promise I will get him to sign a repayment plan. He thinks we have the money, but I spent it on the credit cards. Please don't let him know I am broke. Cover for me, and we will pay you back." Brent read the email. He read it twice. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. "She told me we had the money," he whispered. "She told me the deposit was from my bonus, but that there was a delay in the clearinghouse, so you were just fronting it from the trust to hold the rate." "She spent your bonus, Brent," I said, "and then she borrowed from me to hide it from you." He looked like he was going to be sick right there on the table. "And the invoice?" he asked, his voice trembling. "The $28,000. She told you it was a joke, right?" I asked. "Or maybe she told you it was a way to balance the ledger." "She said you were in trouble," Brent admitted, looking down at his hands. "She said you had mismanaged your own accounts and were demanding money from us. She said that if we gave you this bill, it would cancel out the debt in your mind because she said you were mentally fragile. She said we were doing you a favor by playing along with your delusion." I felt a surge of cold rage, but I pushed it down. "She projected everything," I said. "She took her own crimes and assigned them to me." I flipped to another page. This was the one that would break him. It was a text message exchange between me and Brent himself. From 2 years ago. "Me, Brent. Just checking on the repayment schedule for the bridge loan. Brent. Hey, Millie. Yeah. Delaney is handling the transfers. Thanks again for facilitating that. We appreciate the family support." "I remember this," Brent said. "I thought facilitating meant releasing the trust funds." "And I thought handling the transfers meant you were paying me back," I said. "But look at the timestamp. 2 hours later, Delaney sent me this." I slid a second screenshot across the table. Delaney. "Ignore Brent. He's confused about the dates. I will send you $500 next week. Stop bothering him. You are making him anxious." "She was gatekeeping us," I said. "She kept you in the dark so you would keep spending, and she kept me quiet by promising payment that never came." Brent closed his eyes. He leaned his forehead against his hands. "I am going to lose everything," he whispered. "The house, the car. She spent it all." "And she spent mine," I said. Then Brent said something that made me sit up straighter. "She wants me to sell the Ducati," he said. I frowned. The Ducati was a vintage motorcycle Brent had restored with his father before he passed away. It was the only thing Brent truly loved. He kept it in a climate-controlled storage unit. "Why?" I asked. "To pay you," he said. "She is at home right now, screaming that you are blackmailing us. She says you are demanding $28,000 in hush money, or you will ruin my career. She told me to sell the bike, get the cash, and give it to you so you will go away." I laughed. It was a harsh, dry sound. "She is still trying to control the number. She thinks if she throws $28,000 at me, I will forget the $400,000 she actually owes." "She is terrified," Brent said. "She is calling everyone, aunts, uncles. She is telling them you are a homewrecker, that you have been hitting on me for years and that this lawsuit is just revenge because I rejected you." My stomach turned. The depths of her depravity had no bottom. She was willing to destroy my marriage and my character just to avoid paying a bill. "That is why you need to sign this," I said. I pulled a document out of the back pocket of the binder. Wade had drafted it that morning. It was a simple acknowledgement of debt. It did not require immediate payment. It simply stated that Brent Wexler acknowledged the loans were real, that the amounts were accurate, and that he accepted liability. "If you sign this," I said, sliding a pen across the table, "it stops the lawsuit against you. Wade will file against Delaney separately for fraud and forgery. But if you sign this, we can work out a payment plan. I am not trying to bankrupt you. Brent, I just want the truth on paper." Brent looked at the document. He looked at the pen. "If I sign this," he said, "my marriage is over." "Your marriage was over the minute she forged my signature on a loan document and told you it was a trust fund disbursement," I said. "Now it is just a matter of paperwork." He picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so badly he had to steady it with his other hand. "I am sorry, Millie," he whispered. "I swear, I didn't know." "I know," I said. "But now you do." He signed. He pushed the paper back to me. I checked the signature. It was shaky, but it was valid. I put it in the binder. "You need to get a lawyer," I said again. "Not for me, for her divorce attorney." Brent stood up. He looked like a ghost. "I am going to go home," he said. "I need to ask her where the money went." "Be careful," I said. "A cornered animal bites." He nodded and walked out of the diner. I watched him get into his flashy company car. He sat there for a long time before turning the key. I called Wade. "He signed," I said. "Good," Wade said. "That isolates her. She is now the sole defendant in the fraud case. Brent is a cooperating witness. The pincer movement is complete. But the war wasn't over. The moment Brent pulled out of the parking lot, my phone lit up. It was Delaney. She wasn't texting. She was calling. I didn't answer. Then a voicemail notification popped up. I listened to it on the drive home. "You bitch," Delaney's voice screamed, distorted by static and pure rage. "I saw his location. I know he met you. What did you tell him? Did you lie to him? You are trying to steal my husband now. You are pathetic. You are nothing. I am going to ruin you. I am going to tell everyone about the time you about everything. You are dead to this family." I deleted the voicemail. When I got home, Noah was waiting in the driveway. He looked grim. "Your aunt called," he said. "And your cousin Mike. Delaney is on a warpath. She is telling people that you tried to seduce Brent at a motel near the highway, and that when he refused, you threatened to sue them." "She is predictable," I said, grabbing the binder from the passenger seat. "She is using the homewrecker defense because the greedy sister defense didn't stick. It is getting ugly." "Millie," Noah said, "Mike threatened to come over here and teach me a lesson for letting you act like this." "Let him come," I said. "I have security camera footage of him asking me for $2,000 for gambling debts 3 years ago. I will play it on the front lawn projector." We walked inside. The house felt safe, but the digital world outside was burning. Then, my laptop chimed with an email notification. I walked over to the kitchen counter. It was from an address I recognized: Judith. Email, calm, Aunt Judith. She was my father's older sister, a stern, no-nonsense woman who lived in Florida and rarely got involved in family drama. She was the matriarch everyone feared. The subject line was, "Found this in my archives." I opened it. There was no body text, just a forwarded email chain dating back 6 years. The original email was from my mother, Patricia, to Aunt Judith, from Patricia Hughes to Judith Hughes. Date, March 12, 2019. Judith, I know you warned us about Delaney's spending, but what can we do? She is fragile. She needs the image. We asked Millie to cover the credit card bill again. I know Delaney won't pay her back, she never does. But Millie can take it. She is the strong one. She has that steady job and the quiet life. She doesn't need much. It is better for Millie to absorb the cost than for Delaney to have a breakdown. We have to protect the one who needs it most. Millie is a rock. She won't break. I stared at the screen. The letters swam before my eyes. I know Delaney won't pay her back. My mother knew. She hadn't just hoped Delaney would pay. She hadn't been tricked. She had willingly sacrificed my financial future to protect Delaney's ego. She had decided, 6 years ago, that I was the designated loser in the family game. Millie can take it. It wasn't incompetence. It wasn't blindness. It was a calculated sacrifice. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was the first time I'd cried since the birthday party, but it wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of finality. "Noah," I called out. My voice was steady, but it sounded like it was coming from a great distance. "Yeah?" he asked from the living room. "Print this," I said. "Print 3 copies. 1 for Wade, 1 for the binder." "And the third?" Noah asked, looking at the screen and reading the damning words. "The third is for the meeting," I said, "because we aren't waiting for the deadline anymore. We are ending this tomorrow." The battlefield had shifted. We were no longer fighting in the chaotic, emotional trenches of a birthday party or a family living room. We were moving to the high ground. Wade Harrington called me on Tuesday morning. His voice was brisk, the tone of a general surveying a map that was finally making sense. "We are not doing this at your house, Millie," Wade said, "and we are certainly not doing it at theirs. I have spoken to Brent's counsel. He hired a man named Davids. Good guy. Very by the book, and we have agreed to a summit." "A summit?" I asked, looking at the calendar where I had marked the days with red X's. "A settlement conference," Wade corrected himself. "Friday morning, 10 o'clock, my office in Hawthorne County. There is a conference room with glass walls and a recording system. It is neutral territory, but it is my territory. It sends a message that we are operating under the rules of law. Not the rules of the Hughes family emotional blackmail handbook. They will hate that," I said. "That is the point," Wade replied. I drafted the email myself. Though Wade vetted every word, I sent it to my parents, to Delaney, and to Brent. The terms were absolute. Subject settlement conference agenda and conditions: 1. All parties must appear in person. 2. No minors are permitted on the premises. 3. All discussion will be recorded. 4. Any attempt to engage Millie Hughes in private. Unrecorded conversation will result in the immediate termination of the meeting and the filing of the lawsuit. I hit send. It felt like locking a door. The response was immediate and predictable. My mother, Patricia, called within 4 minutes. I let it go to voicemail. Then she texted, "Mom, Millie, this is ridiculous." A lawyer's office. "We are your parents. Just come over for coffee tomorrow. We can work this out. Delaney is ready to apologize for the tone of the party. If you just apologize for the binder. We need a mother-daughter talk. Just us. No men. No lawyers. Please." I stared at the screen. A mother-daughter talk. 10 years ago, that phrase would have worked. It was the kryptonite that always brought me back to my knees. It implied intimacy. It implied that if I just explained myself well enough, if I just showed them my heart, they would understand. But I looked at the binder sitting on my desk. I looked at the email from Aunt Judith confirming my mother knew I was being bled dry 6 years ago. "No," I whispered to the empty room. I typed a reply. Me. "The meeting is on Friday at 10. If you want to talk, speak to the agenda." I was not isolating myself. I was inoculating myself. I understood now that their power relied on isolation. They needed to get me alone, away from Noah, away from Wade, away from the hard evidence, so they could spin their webs of guilt and obligation. By refusing to meet them without a witness, I was taking away their only weapon. By Wednesday, the atmosphere in the extended family had shifted again. The bombardment of angry texts from cousins had stopped. The Facebook posts calling me a snake had been quietly deleted. It wasn't because they had suddenly developed a conscience. It was because they were afraid. Brent had clearly talked. He had told someone, probably his mother, who told my Aunt Linda that this wasn't just a spat. He had told them about the forgery. He had told them about the trust fund lie. The relatives realized that if they kept attacking me, they might be deposed. They realized that I had receipts for everything, and if they claimed I was a bad person, I might just pull out a file showing how much money they owed me too. Silence is the sound of cowards, realizing they backed the wrong horse. But Delaney was not silent. She was cornered, and she was thrashing. On Thursday evening, I was sitting on the floor of my living room, doing a final review of the invoice Delaney had given me at the party. I wanted to be ready to dismantle it line by line. I looked at an item near the bottom luxury stroller for Leo. $800. I frowned. I remembered that stroller. It was a high-end brand, far nicer than anything Noah and I could afford. It had appeared on my porch shortly after Leo was born. With a card signed, "Love, Auntie Delaney," I had cried. I had thought it was such a generous, sacrificial gift from a sister who was struggling. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through 7 years of photos. I found a picture from that week. It was a photo of the stroller in its box. Then I zoomed in on the shipping label visible in the corner of the cardboard. From Judith Hughes. To Delaney Wexler. I froze. I opened the email app and searched my archives for stroller. I found an email from Aunt Judith, dated a week before the stroller arrived. Subject: baby gift. Hi, Millie. I sent a stroller to Delaney's house because I didn't have your new address handy, and I knew she would see you. Hope it helps with the new baby. I had never seen that email because it had gone to an old university address I rarely checked after graduation. Delaney hadn't bought the stroller. Aunt Judith had bought it. Delaney had simply peeled off the label, slapped her own card on it, and claimed the credit. And now, 7 years later, she was charging me $800 for a gift she had merely transported across town. She stole the credit, I said to Noah, who was ironing a shirt for the meeting. She didn't just steal money. She stole the gratitude. She let me thank her for years for things other people did. She is a vampire, Noah said, setting the iron down. She sucks everything dry: money, credit, joy. I am adding this to the file, I said. Exhibit G: misrepresentation of third-party gifts. I was feeling confident. I had the facts. I had the moral high ground. I had the settlement offer ready. Delaney would sign a repayment plan for the principal, only no interest, and I would drop the fraud lawsuit. I would agree not to press criminal charges for the forgery if she removed my name from the loans within 30 days. It was a mercy kill. It was an exit ramp. But Delaney did not want an exit ramp. She wanted to burn the bridge while we were both standing on it. Friday morning, 3 hours before the meeting, I was at my desk at Crestwood Claims Logistics, tying up a few loose ends before leaving for the lawyer's office. The office was humming with the usual morning activity. Then, my desk phone rang. It was the internal line. "Millie, can you come to my office now?" It was Mr. Henderson, the vice president of operations. His voice was not friendly. It was the voice he used when a client lost $1 million shipment. I walked to his office, my stomach tightening. Had something gone wrong with the fleet? Had I missed a compliance deadline? I walked in. Mr. Henderson was standing behind his desk. The director of HR was sitting in the corner. "Close the door. Millie?" "Mr. Henderson said." I closed it. "Is everything okay?" "We received a call this morning," the HR director said, looking at a notepad. "From an anonymous whistleblower, they claim to have information regarding financial irregularities in your department." My heart stopped, then restarted at double speed. "Irregularities?" I asked. "The caller alleged that you have been diverting vendor rebates into a personal account," Mr. Henderson said, his eyes hard. "They claimed you are using company funds to support a lavish lifestyle and pay off significant personal debts." Lavish lifestyle, personal debts. The phrasing was identical to the text messages Delaney had sent me. She had done it. She had called my job. She was trying to get me fired. She was trying to cut off my income source so I couldn't pay Wade, so I would be too broken to fight her. It was a nuclear strike, but she had made a critical error. She assumed that I managed my work the way she managed her life, with chaos, shortcuts, and hidden secrets. She forgot that I was an auditor. I did not cry. I did not panic. I looked at Mr. Henderson and let out a short, incredulous breath. "Mr. Henderson," I said calmly, "did the caller happen to sound like a woman in her early 30s who speaks very quickly and uses the word lavish a lot?" Mr. Henderson frowned. "That is not relevant. The accusation is serious." "The accusation is a fabrication," I said, "and I can prove it in 30 seconds. I walked over to Mr. Henderson's computer. "May I?" He nodded slowly. I logged into our ERP system. "Vendor rebates are processed automatically through the clearinghouse in Chicago," I explained, my fingers flying across the keyboard. "I do not have access to route them. No one below the CFO level does. That is the control protocol I wrote myself 3 years ago. Remember, I pulled up the logs. Here is the audit trail for every rebate in the last 24 months, all matched, all cleared, all accounted for to the penny." I turned to the HR director. "As for my personal debts, I am currently in a legal dispute with my sister regarding money she stole from me. She has threatened to ruin my reputation if I do not drop the lawsuit. This call was her carrying out that threat." I reached into my bag and pulled out the black binder. I always carried it now. I opened it to the threats section. I pulled out the screenshot of the text from Jennifer, where Delaney explicitly stated, "I am going to break her. I am going to make her pay." I slid it across the desk. "This is the whistleblower," I said. "She is not concerned about Crestwood's finances. She is trying to weaponize you to obstruct a civil fraud investigation." Mr. Henderson read the text. His expression shifted from suspicion to disgust. "She called here to settle a family score," he asked. "She called here because she is desperate," I said, "and because she thinks everyone operates without a paper trail." Mr. Henderson looked at the HR director. "The logs are clear. Millie's accounts are the cleanest in the company. We audited them last month for the quarterly review." He looked back at me. "I am sorry. Millie, we had to investigate." "I understand," I said. "But I need a favor. I need a record of that call. I need the time, the duration, and a transcript if you recorded it." "Why?" the HR director asked. "Because I have a meeting with her in 2 hours," I said, closing my binder. "And she just gave me the evidence I need to end this forever." I walked out of the Crestwood building at 9:30. I got into my car. My hands were steady. My breathing was deep. Delaney had tried to kill me professionally. She had aimed for the jugular. If I had been anyone else, if I had been sloppy, if I had been unethical, even once she might have succeeded. But I was Millie Hughes. I was the rock. I was the one who kept the receipts. I drove to Wade's office. Noah was waiting in the lobby. He looked nervous. "Ready?" he asked. "More than ready," I said. We went up the elevator. The doors opened to the reception area of Harrington, Stiles, and Associates. They were there. My parents sat on a leather sofa, looking small and aged. My mother was wringing a tissue in her hands. My father was staring at a painting on the wall, refusing to look at anyone. Brent sat in a chair by the window, flanked by his lawyer. He looked like a man attending his own funeral. And Delaney. She stood near the conference room door, She was wearing a white suit, impeccable, sharp. She had her chin high. She looked confident. She thought she had won. She thought that right now, I was being escorted out of my building by security, crying and disgraced. She saw me walk in. She smiled. It was a small, cruel twitch of the lips. "You made it," she said as I approached. "I thought you might have work troubles." I stopped in front of her. I did not smile back. "Hello, Delaney," I said. "Hello. Mom? Dad?" Wade appeared from the hallway. "Everyone, please come in. We are on the record." We filed into the conference room. It was a glass box, sterile and bright. The table was long mahogany. Delaney sat on one side, with our parents. Brent and his lawyer sat at the end. Noah and I sat opposite Delaney. Wade sat at the head. "This is a settlement conference," Wade began, turning on a digital recorder. "The goal is to resolve the outstanding debts owed to Mrs. Millie Hughes without further litigation." "There are no debts," Delaney interrupted immediately. She didn't look at me. She looked at Wade. "My sister is delusional. In fact, we are preparing a countersuit for defamation. She has been spreading lies about my finances." She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. "And frankly," Delaney said, her voice dripping with faux concern, "I do not think Millie is in a position to demand money. I hear her employment situation is unstable." She waited for me to flinch. She waited for the panic. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the binder, but I did not open it to the bank statements. I opened it to the very back, to a page I had just printed at the office. It was an affidavit signed by Mr. Henderson and the HR director of Crestwood Claims Logistics, time-stamped 45 minutes ago. It confirmed that a malicious false report had been filed against me, that it had been investigated and disproven, and that the company was willing to testify that the call originated from Delaney Wexler's cell phone number. "Actually, my employment is very stable," I said. "My boss sends his regards. He also sent this." I slid the paper across the table. Delaney picked it up. As she read it, the color drained from her face so fast it looked like a special effect. Her white suit was no longer a symbol of purity. It was the color of surrender. "Tortious interference," Wade said casually, looking at the ceiling. "Malicious prosecution, slander per se. In Ohio, attacking someone's professional livelihood with known falsehoods carries punitive damages. We are talking triple the award. Delaney." I watched her hands start to shake. The paper rattled against the mahogany table. "You called my job," I said softly. "You tried to take food out of my children's mouths because you didn't want to pay for your own wedding." My mother looked at the paper, then at Delaney. "Delaney, you called her boss." I. Delaney stammered. "I heard rumors. I was just concerned." "No," Brent spoke up from the end of the table. His voice was cracked but loud. "You told me this morning that you were going to nuke her. That is what you said." Delaney whipped her head around to look at her husband. "Shut up, Brent." "I am done shutting up," Brent said. He looked at his lawyer, then at me. "I am ready to sign the agreement. Millie, I admit the debt. I admit everything." Delaney looked around the room. The walls were glass, but she was the one who was exposed. She looked at our parents, but my father was looking at the floor, and my mother was looking at me with a dawning, horrific realization that she had backed a monster. "It is over, Delaney," I said. "The invoice is canceled. The game is done." I opened the binder to the settlement agreement. I uncapped a pen. "You can sign this," I said, "which commits you to a repayment plan and requires you to remove my name from all loans within 30 days, or Wade files the lawsuit for fraud, forgery, and tortious interference before we leave this building." I pushed the paper toward her. "Choose," I said. The conference room clock on the wall ticked with a rhythmic, sterile precision that seemed to mock the chaos sitting around the mahogany table. It was 10:14 in the morning. Delaney was 14 minutes late. Wade sat at the head of the table, his hands clasped over a file folder that was significantly thinner than my black binder, but far more dangerous. My parents, Patricia and Gordon, sat like statues on the leather sofa, refusing to look at me or Noah. Brent was in the corner, staring at his phone, his posture that of a man waiting for a sentencing hearing. Then, the heavy glass door swung open. Delaney swept in. She was not wearing the defeated look I expected after the revelation about my job. Instead, she was wearing oversized sunglasses and clutching a tissue, looking like a grieving widow from an old noir film. She did not look at me. She looked at our parents. "I am so sorry I'm late," she choked out, her voice trembling with a performance-ready vibrato. "I just could not stop crying in the car. To think that my own sister would drag us into a lawyer's office, it breaks my heart. It really does." She slumped into the chair opposite me, dabbing at dry eyes. She was trying to suck the oxygen out of the room, to center the narrative on her emotional distress rather than her financial crimes. Wade did not offer her a tissue. He did not offer her water. He simply clicked the pen in his hand. "Mrs. Wexler," Wade said, his voice devoid of warmth. "This is a settlement conference, not a therapy session. We are here to discuss facts, and the facts are not on your side." "Facts," Delaney snapped, dropping the fragile act for a split second. "The fact is that my sister is jealous and vindictive. She gave me those things. She gave them to me." Wade slid 2 distinct piles of paper across the polished wood. "Exhibit A," Wade announced, pointing to the left stack. "This contains the certified bank records of every transfer Millie Hughes made to you, your husband, or your creditors over the last 9 years. It totals $412,653.14. He pointed to the right stack. "Exhibit B," he continued. "This contains the evidence of your campaign to destroy my client's reputation. It includes the affidavit from the Crestwood HR department regarding your false whistleblower call. It includes the text messages you sent to family members alleging Millie was an embezzler. And it includes the forensic analysis of the forged signature on the auto loan extension." Delaney stared at the papers. She did not touch them. "That is all hearsay," she hissed. "It was a gift. Families give gifts. You cannot sue someone for being generous." "We are not suing for generosity," Wade corrected her. "We are suing for breach of contract." He opened a folder and projected a document onto the screen on the wall. It was a blown-up image of a text message from Delaney to me, dated 5 years ago. "I swear I will pay you back every cent for the house deposit. I will sign whatever you want. Just send the money." "In the state of Ohio," Wade said, "a written promise to repay, even via text, creates a binding obligation. You did not ask for a gift, Delaney. You asked for a loan, and you defaulted." Delaney looked at the screen. She looked for an escape route. She turned to Brent. "Brent, say something," she demanded. Tell them Millie is lying." Brent slowly lifted his head. He did not look at me. He looked directly at his wife. He did not look angry. He looked exhausted. "Delaney," Brent said, "just tell me one thing, and do not lie. I have seen the bank records. I know there is no trust fund." The room went deadly silent. My mother gasped softly. "What trust fund?" my father asked, looking confused. "What is he talking about?" "She told me," Brent said, his voice rising slightly, "that the money for the wedding, the house, and the car came from a family trust that Millie managed. She told me Millie was just the executor. She told me we were spending our own inheritance." He looked at Delaney, who was now pale beneath her makeup. "Did you tell me that?" Brent asked. Delaney's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked at our parents, terrified. If she admitted it, she admitted to defrauding her husband. If she denied it, she admitted to stealing from me. "I made it easier for you to understand," she stammered. "I didn't want you to worry about money. Brent, I was trying to protect you." "You lied to me," Brent said. He stood up. Good. He picked up his chair and moved it 3 feet to the right, creating a physical gap between him and Delaney. It was a small movement, but it felt like a divorce decree. You let me spend Millie's savings because you wanted to look rich. My father stood up. His face was red. Delaney, is this true? You told him there was a trust. Sit down, Gordon, Wade commanded. It wasn't a suggestion. My father sat. Wade turned to the screen again. He clicked a button. The image changed. Now regarding Mr. and Mrs. Hughes, Wade said, we have established that Delaney deceived her husband. However, the evidence suggests that you two were not deceived. You were complicit. He projected the email from my mother to Aunt Judith, the one where she admitted knowing Delaney would never pay me back but insisted that Millie can take it. My mother put a hand over her mouth. She read her own words, projected in high definition. It is better for Millie to absorb the cost than for Delaney to have a breakdown. You knew, I said. It was the first time I had spoken since the meeting began. My voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a decade of silence. You knew she was stealing from me. You knew she wasn't paying me back, and you didn't stop it. You encouraged it. Millie, honey, my mother pleaded, reaching across the table. You have to understand. Delaney is different. She is fragile. You are so strong. We just wanted everyone to be okay. I am not strong, I said. I am just tired, and I am done being the sacrifice you throw into the volcano to keep her happy. I looked at Delaney. She was crying for real now. The walls were closing in. Her husband had moved away. Her parents were exposed. Her lies were on a screen. Here is the offer, I said. I pushed a document toward her. You acknowledge the debt, I said. We are restructuring it. I am removing the interest. You will pay back the principal amount of $412,000 over the next 20 years. That is a monthly payment of roughly $1,700. It is the cost of a mortgage. Delaney stared at the paper. I can't afford that. Then you sell the house, I said. You sell the car, you get a second job. I don't care how you do it, but you are going to pay it. And if I don't sign, she asked, a flicker of her old defiance returning. Then Wade files the lawsuit, I said, and the district attorney gets the file on the forged signature and the wire fraud, and you go to prison, Delaney, real prison, not a timeout. She looked at Wade. He nodded, confirming the threat was real. She looked at Brent. He was looking out the window. She picked up the pen. Her hand shook so violently that the pen tapped against the table. She signed. It was a scratchy, ugly signature, but it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Brent, Wade said. Brent slid the paper over. He signed it without hesitation. There is one more thing, I said. I looked at my parents. The agreement includes a non-disparagement clause. I said, if anyone in this family speaks ill of me, Noah, or my children, if you tell one lie, if you make one post, if you whisper one rumor, the full amount becomes due immediately, and I will enforce it. We would never, my mother sobbed. You already did, I said. But now it stops. I stood up. The meeting is over. I walked toward the door. My mother jumped up and rushed toward me. Millie, wait. Can't we hug? We are still a family. We can fix this. I stopped. I looked at her. I felt a phantom ache in my chest. The old reflex to comfort her, to fix it, to say it was okay. But I looked at Noah, who was standing by the door, holding my hand. I looked at the binder in Wade's hands. No, Mom, I said. We can't fix this with a hug. You broke something that glue doesn't fix. So that is it, my father asked. You are cutting us off. I am setting a boundary, I said. You do not come to my house without an invitation. You do not call me to demand things. You do not ask for money. If you want a relationship with me or my children, it starts from zero. You have to earn it. And frankly, you have a lot of work to do. I turned and walked out. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel like cheering. I felt light. It was the weightlessness of a prisoner whose chains had finally rusted through. We walked to the elevator. The doors closed. shutting out the sight of my weeping mother and my defeated sister. Noah squeezed my hand. "It is done. It is done," I repeated. 2 days later, on Sunday evening, our backyard looked different. There were no caterers. There was no 3-tier strawberry cake. There were just strings of warm yellow lights draped over the fence and the smell of charcoal from the grill. I had invited 5 people. My friend Sarah from work, my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, who always watched the kids when I had an emergency, and Wade, who had surprisingly accepted the invitation to a victory burger. The cake was vanilla. It came from a box. Leo had helped me frost it, so it was lopsided and covered in too many sprinkles. "Happy birthday, Mommy!" Leo shouted, running around the yard with a sparkler. I sat on the patio chair, watching the fireflies blink in the twilight. Delaney was probably packing boxes right now. My parents were probably sitting in their silent house, trying to figure out where they went wrong, but I wasn't thinking about them. Noah brought me a slice of cake on a paper plate. He sat down next to me and put his arm around my shoulders. 30 years old, he said. "A little late for a party, isn't it?" "It is never too late," I said. I looked at the yard. It was small. It was imperfect, but it was mine. Every blade of grass, every brick, every dollar that paid for the burgers, it was mine. I had spent my 20s trying to buy my family's love. I had spent a fortune trying to be the person they wanted me to be. And in the end, it had cost me almost everything. But tonight, as I watched the smoke rise from the candles, I realized I had gotten something back that was worth more than $400,000. I had gotten my name back. I wasn't the bank. I wasn't the doormat. I wasn't the sensible one who existed to clean up messes. I was Millie. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. I blew out the candles. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, please let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I would love to hear your thoughts on how you would have handled a sister like Delaney. Don't forget to subscribe to Juliet Revenge Stories, like the video, and hit that hype button so we can share this victory with even more people.